Okay, here we go. It is tell my story time. I resisted for so long to do this, but met a woman, Emily, who just said, you know what? It doesn't have to look good. Just get it out there. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm Amanda Leon, author of How to Make Him Chase You and How to Bag a Bombshell, and the Thrival Journal and Planner. And also, I'm a polo player, and I am a friend and a daughter, and a yogi, kind of all these things. But the thing I wanted to talk to you today about is my new book, which is How to Make Him Chase You. And so why this book, right? First and foremost, I wrote this book for me. I went through some pretty big heartaches in my life, and I've had some pretty unique experiences in my life. And I wrote it for me to help find and reroute into my feminine power. I believe a lot of women today, especially in the Western societies, have been told that they have to be men and constantly in their masculine energy to be perceived as successful or powerful, which is totally untrue. So a little bit of my background and how I ended up always stuck in my masculine energy. I went to all girls prep school most of my life. It was a really great experience, but it was also a really hard experience. I would be up till anywhere from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. doing homework every night. I played sports every season. I had to get to the top of my class to get into a top school. I was really only rewarded for my masculine doing energy and not so much my feminine energy. And I was also the daughter of a man who really wanted a son, and I was the first girl, so that also contributed to that, being stuck in the masculine. And yeah, I think from there I ended up in a really great school in California where I went for college, and I decided to double major, again, just always being an overachiever, into interdepartmental majors. So that means neither has their own department, so you have to constantly go to heads of different departments begging for classes, and nobody had ever done this double major before. I could see how they crossed over, but nobody else could. So one of my majors was cognitive neuroscience, so cognitive science with an emphasis on neuroscience. But I also studied AI, philosophy of mind, like Descartes, psychology, and neurobiology. And then in my other major, it was diplomacy and world affairs, so international relations. And what are relationships if not diplomatic relations? So I think those two things are what really qualify me to talk about relationships and the brain and navigating them and how to be most successful at them. So outside of my academic life, I also have two very personal stories. So one was I was in a relationship, 2-year relationship with a man who was absolutely textbook avoidant personality, and it just really threw me through the ringer. It went from him pursuing me and him being the pusher of let's move in together, let's buy Tupperware together, let's have this life together, to him being totally cold, him being withdrawn on his phone all the time, him breaking up with me multiple times, and I couldn't get it. I had always been successful at everything. Why was this different? What was I doing wrong? I thought it was me. And so I kind of went back into my study mode and tried to figure it out. As I say, I put my little lab coat on and got out my little test tube and like, okay, I have to figure this out. And I ended up diving back into the literature and really discovering that I was trying to be a man and I was trying to compete with him. And when you have two masculine energy partners, they're just going to bump heads all the time. So, ladies, I'm not saying to give up your masculine energy, because I think it's part of the human condition to have masculine and feminine energy, whether you're a man or a woman. What I found, though, is that most women find it more comfortable and rejuvenating to be in their masculine energy, because for the majority of the population, not all of them, it's what's most natural to them. So that's kind of what led me back into the path of my research. At the time, I had been running a marketing company for years, so I did not think I was going to go back into neuroscience. And yeah, I discovered, I was a little bit part of my own demise, other than him also, like I said, being textbook avoidant. So it was never going to work. And so I wanted to be really ready to meet the next one, the guy, and have a much better, healthier relationship. So my second thing that really qualifies me to talk about relationships, the brain, all that kind of stuff. So when I lived in Los Angeles, like I said, I went to college in California, and I also lived there on and off for 3 years. And such a weird story, but I fell into this group of pickup artists, and I actually consulted with 3 different pickup companies on pickup. And you might think, why would they ever want to consult with you, Amanda? The reason was because at the time, I was one of the most well-read people in neurolinguistic programming, which is something that pickup artists were using a lot at the time. So I had read pretty much every research paper there was to read about it, because both of my dissertations, both in diplomacy and world affairs and cognitive neuroscience, were on neurolinguistic programming. So I can even add a little picture right here so you can see me with a very famous pickup artist. But there were 3 different companies that I consulted with, and I even almost got a job as head of development for a cool pickup company. They had this gorgeous office in a high-rise in Hollywood, and I went through 9 grueling, I mean, learning how to do pivot tables and Excel and all this other kind of crazy stuff, 9 rounds of interviews for this job. And it was just between me and this one other guy, and we went into the office for a day, and we met with the CEO, all those kind of things, and I did end up getting the job, and I was really, really bummed because I had come so close. And I think it was, again, that wanting to win thing. But I kept in contact with the guy who I met at the office that day, and because we were both originally from Texas, and we both loved motorcycles. And so years later, we would be having lunch at a burger joint somewhere in Texas, and he said, yeah, it was such a bummer you didn't get the job. I didn't agree with them, but, they said it was just because you were too attractive. And I said, wait, what? Excuse me? And he said, yeah, they thought you would have been a distraction in the office because you were too attractive, so they hired the guy. And I thought to myself, wow. Well, my first thought was, I wore a pantsuit with a blazer to the full day interview. I kind of was victim blaming myself, oh, did I do something wrong? Was I wearing something too sexy? Which, again, never victim blame yourself. But yeah, it, it had nothing really, there's nothing you can do when people are going to judge you like that. And so I just thought, you know what? Whatever, their loss. I'm going to start my own thing. And while I love coaching men and helping men pick up, because ultimately I feel that when men understand social cues, women are safer. So I am super for helping men learn pickup. The thing that really got to my heart and was super personal to me was I was in such a dark place in that 2-year live-in relationship. And when I say dark place, I mean staying up late at night in a fetal position in the living room while he's in the other room sleeping, just curled up, sobbing, just feeling so stuck, feeling so helpless, feeling so miserable. And I just don't want another woman to ever feel that way, ever. And so that's how I decided to write my book, How to Make Him Chase You. So the book is actually 3 volumes. So the first volume is you, second volume, him, and then the third volume is the team. So you is really all about you, right? I think a lot of times we want to throw stones and blame and say, well, he does this and he does that. But what the reality is that 80% of our problems all have to do with our brain's perception of the problem. And that's great news, right? So that you don't have to fix him to be happy. It's really about fixing you and your brain and rewiring it. So I really help you rewire it. And you don't need a degree in neuroscience to understand this. You don't even need to understand research papers or all of that. I've written it in a very plain, easy to understand way with really cool writing exercises. And again, this is stuff that I use too, because growing up, it was so natural to be, or maybe not natural, but it was so persistent to be in my masculine energy, because that's the only way I received love from this parent. I think Tony Robbins brings it down to these two. He says, he asks 2 questions. One is, whose love did you crave more as a child, your mother's or your father's? So the answer to that for me is my father's. And then the second question, and it could be either for you, the second question is, who did you think you had to be to get that love? And for me, that was, I had to be perfect. I had to be the best athlete. I had to be the best academic student. And then I thought, then I'll finally get love, which are total illusions, by the way. It's not a Harvard degree that's going to get him to fall in love with you. It's not being the most athletic. It's not being the prettiest. It's not being the skinniest. And trust me, I also tried to go down that path. I did beauty pageants for years. I was Miss Pasadena, USA in California. I competed in the Miss Texas pageant. And trust me, for somebody who's done it all, none of those things help you receive real love. And I have experienced since some of the most amazing dating experiences, some of the most incredible relationships. And I finally can come at it from a place of having the vulnerability. I actually got this from a friend. She said, you know, I really think he's the one. And so being able to be vulnerable enough and say, I think he's the one, and then also have the absolute certainty to know in your heart, and you know what, if he's not the one, wow, how much better is the one gonna be? Because this guy's really close, right? And so that's how I want women to feel. Like, not to be upset that he ghosted you, not to be upset that the guy that you like doesn't like you back, not to be so apprehensive to tell someone that you love them, not to be so guarded with your heart because you're afraid someone's going to hurt you, but to soften and be in your intuition and be in your female power, which is being vulnerable and receiving and allowing men to court you. and appreciating them and delighting in them. And it's such a much better place to live. Uh, so that's my hope for you. It's my dream to help everyone. And so I really hope you like my book. I put my heart and soul into it. There are really cool diagrams that I made myself and places for writing exercises. And like I said, I really wrote this for me so that I could have something to go back to when I find myself, to retrain my own brain when I find myself falling into bad patterns. So I hope that you find it helpful as well. And if you want to know any more of my stories slash background, I am more than happy to share on here. So I hope and dream that you receive all of the love that you deserve.